There has been a ton of back and forth the past few weeks over solving America's decade-long crime crisis. So let's just get really simple here. What is the first thing someone does when they are a victim of a crime or think they might be the victim of a crime? They call the police. And evidently now, Democrats are going back to that. For example, in Minneapolis, just after the school shooting happened, the Democratic governor called in more cops, and the ultra-progressive mayor thanked the governor for sending in more police. Here it is. Thank you, Governor Tim Walz, for sending additional law enforcement resources to patrol and protect our schools, places of worship, and neighborhoods. Huh. From those who wanted to defund the police. In California, after blasting Trump for sending in the National Guard to help free up police to fight crime, Governor Gavin Newsom turned around and sent in more cops to fight crime.
We're going to be expanding this operation, building on the success that is now included over 9,000 arrests statewide.
So his comments admit what Democrats have been denying now for weeks. Democrats realize there is a crime problem in their cities. They just don't want Trump to be able to take credit for it. Mike Nellis, former senior advisor to Kamala Harris, native of Chicago, America's murder capital for the past 13 years.
I'm sorry, you must be talking about Baton Rouge.
I'm going by numbers, not by rate.
Well, crime rate, I think, matters quite a bit when you talk about the number of people in Chicago.
Okay, but is there a tacit understanding? Come on, it's just you and I talking. Is there a tacit understanding by Democrats that the whole crime's down, there's nothing to see, stop worrying about crime that we heard about for the past 3 weeks was a political mistake?
Well, I don't think you've heard any serious elected officials say that crime isn't an issue in this country. And if you want to place the clips and find that for me, I'm happy to respond in kind to them. But crime is an issue in cities all across America. People don't feel safe. I think the Democratic Party's been working on this. And what's happened is this has become completely politicized, where people are pulling out random statistics that don't make any sense to try to make crime out to be an issue only in Democratic states, when crime is actually falling in Democratic states, not enough, and we should continue to do work, and it's rising in Republican states. And you started off this clip by saying that Democrats are now admitting that calling the police is good, but everybody knows that calling the police is good. I mean, I got a death threat that mentioned my son last year. The first thing I did was call the police to file a report on that to keep my family safe.
Right.
That's not a Democrat or a Republican thing.
Well, yeah, we can all remember a couple of years ago when defund the police was a plank in the Democratic platform, though.
There are members of the party that believe in defunding the police, which I think is the worst slogan in the history of American politics, probably. But I would point out that Donald Trump is the one who actually defunded the police.
There have been budget cuts. I get it, but I think we're getting to an important point here, right? Which is that Democrats were caught a little flat-footed, that crime was something that was such a nerve for the American people. I don't think you would have thought that 90% of Americans in an AP poll said that crime in big cities is a major problem. And look, you sort of talk about talking points. As soon as Trump started talking about crime in D.C., the instant response across every television channel was crime's down 26%, Trump is nuts. And then all of a sudden, they started seeing sound bites from citizens here in D.C. and also citizens in Chicago saying, I'm really scared. And now Democrats are changing. If it wasn't a problem, why all of a sudden is Newsom talking about how many arrests they've had in California?
I think that's reductive, because crime is a problem and Democrats have been doing that work. But Donald Trump decided to politicize this to distract from the things that he doesn't want to talk about. He doesn't want to talk about the economy, doesn't want to talk about getting walked over by Putin, doesn't want to talk about the Epstein files. So he's elevated this to be an issue. Nobody. So
what you're saying is Donald Trump is good at playing Democrats and distracting them and getting them to fight on an 80-20 issue.
Well, I think he's good at playing the narrative game because he doesn't want to talk about inflation, but no serious Democrat would tell you that crime isn't an issue. And Democrats need to do a better job at it, as do Republicans. The challenge here is that Donald Trump's solution to it is to militarize American cities and restrict people's freedoms. And that's not a sustainable or a free way to do it. We should be investing in community policing. We should be trying to build up our police departments, reforming and getting better at how we police our cities.
Okay, well, I think two things can be true at once. I'm here in D.C. I have not felt militarized. I actually saw some National Guard guys earlier today. They were not checking anybody's papers or asking anybody for anything. Said hello to them. But get back to your issue about Republican states, and I think this makes a good point. Montana has the highest gun ownership rate in the country, 6,600 gun owners per 100,000 people. think about most people in Montana have more than one gun. Yet the gun murder rate is 3.7 per 100,000. In Chicago, the average homicide rate over the past year's 26.9 per 100,000. Wyoming, same thing. Their gun murder rate is 3 per 100,000. In D.C., 26.6 per 100,000. Alaska, 64,000 gun owners per 100,000 people. Huge gun ownership, only a murder rate of 6.3. In Baltimore, the murder rate was 51.1 per 100,000. Are Democrats going to need to change the discussion away from guns are the problem and gun control can solve the problem to, you say community policing, but also start saying we have to lock up criminals and stop the soft on crime prosecution ideas?
Well, I think we should be tough on crime. I think we should throw criminals behind bars. I think there's a huge difference between Montana and the city of Chicago, both of which are places that I love. Like Montana is a gorgeous state, but it's completely spread out, much smaller towns, very, very different. Chicago is very much on top of each other with 400 million people living in basically a 15-mile radius, it feels like most days. So it's just you're comparing apples to dragons in that, and I don't think that that makes any sense. And to the same point that I made last week, is you can really take the crime statistics in any direction you want.
Yeah.
I think you said last week on your show, 12 of the top 15 safest cities in America have Democratic mayors. I don't think that tells me anything other than a lot of small towns all across, the country have Democratic mayors. But it's you can twist these numbers, and what we're not talking about is sustainable solutions that keep people safe in red states and blue states, small towns and big cities.
Okay. Well, I think you make a great point, and we're starting to have that conversation, which both of us, I think, agree is a good thing. Mike, always welcome. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.